Welcome to another episode of the Idle Talk podcast. I am your co-host, Jacob.
And I'm Peyton.
So the next couple episodes, we want to do something pretty fun now that we're coming off of just watching season 1 of Survivor. Something we wanted to do that we thought would be pretty cool would be comparing season 1, where it all started, to the most recent season of Survivor, season 45, that we just watched last fall. And specifically, we wanted to break it down into the 3 main categories that Survivor is about, which is outwit, outplay, and outlast. So those 3 categories kind of define the 3 important parts of Survivor that all go hand in hand together in order for you to be a successful Survivor player. So we want to talk about those 3 categories specifically, how they've evolved and changed for the better or for the worse throughout these 45 seasons of Survivor. And we wanted to start that off first by talking about the outwit category.
Yeah, so I mean, outwit, outplay, outlast, they're kind of the 3 core pillars of what Survivor is. And each of those have changed over time. So we're kind of going to take a bird's eye view at Survivor as a whole and really look at, like, as if you're, a before and after picture. Before is season 1, after season 45. We're not really right now worried too much about what's going to happen in the middle. That'll happen over the course of this podcast as we go on over the coming weeks, months, and maybe years. Depends on how much Survivor there is.
It's a lot to
we
get
keep
through.
going on in the future and stuff. But there's a lot of content there. But we'll dive into the granular stuff later. But right now, it's good to zoom out and take kind of a big picture look at it and how it was, in 2000 with season 1, and then how it's in the end of 2023 going into 2024.
Yeah.
Season 45. So that being said, like Jacob said, this episode, let's focus on the outwit portion of outwit, outplay, outlast. That way we can kind of get through all 3 of those and give them each their own kind of moment to shine. But maybe, I guess, let's start first by defining, like, all right, what are we going to determine? What are we going to call outwit right now? Because wit plays a part in a lot of parts of the game. Plays a part in strategy, plays a part in challenges in terms of puzzles or, how you approach the challenge, plays a part in, it's all strategy, right? But it's strategy, whether it's like interpersonal relationships or bigger long-term kind of strategy, tribe strategy as a whole, or individual, one-on-one. And like, there's a lot of things where you are outwitting people or using your wit. So how do we want to kind of narrow that down to like what we're going to discuss and focus on as far as outwit goes? I think the best way to do is we probably talk about outwit as it pertains to like the game of Survivor, in terms of like the game that is made, right? Is like the game that Jeff Probst made in season 1 and the game that they made in season 45, how they approach outwit. Not necessarily how people play outwit, but how the game is built for people to outwit one another, and then the same with outplay and outlast. But I guess let's kind of define that before we explore it more. Is like, all right, what are we talking about here when we say the outwit portion of outwit, outplay, outlast?
Yeah. So I think a big portion of outwit is how the game dynamically changes throughout the season and how the players have to adapt to those changes. So any twists that are involved, people losing their vote, people having immunity idols, playing around those things, those dynamics that are introduced by the producers and meant to cause the players to have to adapt and change to the situation. I think those are the primary aspects of outwit and Survivor.
Yeah. I think, I would say especially now, right? Those are outwit. If we look at season 1, what did outwit mean in season 1? Outwit meant,
I think outwit just means being smarter than your other contestants.
It was vague in season 1. It was very like, it was just outwit, outplay, outlast was kind of catchy, like they knew they wanted to outplay, outlast. Let's do outwit too. Like that'd be my thought, is it wasn't like the core focus of those 3. I think the original Survivor was about outlasting. Like if you were looking at that, like those 3 words, outlast is all caps and bold. Nowadays, it's kind of outwit, outplay.
Yeah.
Outlast is like really small font, all lowercase. The outwit bears a lot more. So I think there's 2 parts to outwit. There's like the what the game mechanics that force people to think and be witty and outwit their opponents and how they respond to those game mechanics. And then there's like outwitting them in the vote as well.
Yeah.
Because the way voting works in Survivor has changed. And that's not necessarily because of the producers, but the producers saw what happened in season 1 and how it made for a very interesting television program. And that's their goal, right? They want to make interesting television that people will watch so they can sell ad spots, right? That's, at the end of the day, that's what they care about. So whatever is interesting, whatever they think interests people, and, votes that are, blind sides or interesting votes or strategic votes, people like that. Whether you agree with it or not, it's interesting, it gets people's attention. So it becomes a very central part of the gameplay. Whether that was implemented by the producers or not, it was encouraged as they went forward.
Yeah, with those ground rules, I think we'll take a short break and come back and talk about the Outwit portion of Survivor and how it's evolved.
Yeah, cool. You ready? And I'll jump in and let's talk about. I'll probably talk. I think we probably talk about voting for a little bit, because that's where there's like, it's the most cut and dry, and then we can talk about game mechanics. We're at 7.5. Not bad. Okay, for anyone who has seen season 1 of Survivor, it's very, very clear, and we've said this before, that they were playing a different game from today's game of Survivor. It was the first time that this has ever happened. It was a social experiment, and it wasn't viewed as much as a game as it was a social experiment. And the social experiment was, how would these people vote out one another? And so we see in season 1 a lot of interesting dynamics in terms of how people want to vote. You have people voting with their conscience, keeping it a secret, and, a tribal council where everyone gets a vote, right? That does not happen in Survivor today.
No.
That never happens.
The closest thing that happened was in 45, the council that Petura flipped on Jake, where there was, I think, 4 people who got a vote. That's the closest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen anymore. So, like, you have that happening. You have Sean voting in alphabetical order. That literally was the difference between Jenna staying and leaving. Yeah, like, that kind of thing doesn't happen, right? The votes were not thought out, and they were not thought of as a strategic move. Voting was not, in the minds of everyone but the Tagi 4, a strategic opportunity. It was I guess you could say, like, a necessary evil of playing the game, a brutal requirement that they all had to do. They were forced to participate even if they didn't want to. Like, that's kind of the way they all viewed it. And so I think we can see, like, that is the single biggest change from season 1 to season 45. I think, like, there's a lot of big changes, but I think that is the biggest change because that is a core mechanic of Survivor, and it is so fundamental to what makes Survivor unique. And honestly, not even what makes Survivor unique, but what shaped how reality TV has been for the last 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Survivor doing that's what everybody else does now, right?
Yeah, like Big Brother.
Yeah. I mean, you look at anything like that, like, it's very much, there's a voting, like, a lot of times a voting mechanic, that was kind of started here at Survivor. So I think that's the biggest thing that has evolved and changed, is that the very first episode of any new season of Survivor, alliances are going to be drawn in the sand right away.
Yeah.
Like, in the season 1, alliance was a dirty word.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I guess, all right, so I got a question, Jacob. In the context of season 1 Survivor, we put ourselves in the mindset of the people on this beach. They just showed up. Survivor's never happened. Is an alliance playing dirty?
In the context of that time, I mean, even knowing what I know now about Survivor, I personally don't think it's
I agree.
playing dirty.
I
think people are just going into it thinking, not knowing that it's a game. Like, people at that time still called it a game. Some of them said we're playing a game, and Richard, he was playing a game. He didn't get feelings involved. The other people knew they were playing a game, but still let their feelings get involved and let that influence their decisions. So I think the big issue comes is when people let their feelings get hurt because they were left out of the alliance, which that's just them not jumping on the ship when they should have. It's terrible as it is.
What's interesting to me is that, I mean, the people that were claiming it's dirty, right, is Pagong.
The people who were getting singled out.
But But the thing is, they could have just made an alliance. Like,
Yeah.
And that's the thing where they were like so
And it's crazy
against alliances that they didn't want to make one themselves to survive. Like, I don't.
And because they went into the merge 5-5.
Yeah.
If the 5 Pagong had mobilized and banded together, Sean wasn't with the 4.
Mm-mm.
He was voting alphabetical, and they didn't vote. The first person to leave the merged tribe was Gretchen,
Mm-hmm.
and Gretchen was not the first alphabetical.
Yep.
And so it was Gretchen solely went because the other people just
Gretchen
voted for
4
whoever.
votes.
Yeah.
She just straight up got 4 votes.
And so if the Pagong 5 had mobilized, they would have won the game.
Yeah. And that's something where they weren't thinking like that, right? Because they had played their whole game of just them on their island, right? When they were separate tribes, no alliances. I mean, there was an alliance from the beginning on Tagi Beach.
Yeah.
Like, they had always been an alliance, and then they stayed strong moving through. And so, like, I don't think that it's playing dirty. Like,
I
they
don't
viewed
either.
it, but I see where they like, I kind of see where they're coming from. But I also think that if I was there, and they said you need to make it to the end of the game, it's for $1 million, and you vote out, like, one person gets voted out every 3 days, and you know that your actions are directly going to determine if you go or you stay, but it's not your actions that determine it. It's whether people want to vote for you or not. And so, I mean, it's just basic psychology, and knowing, like, there's strength in numbers. All you need to have are the numbers in the vote. Yeah. And it seems like such a basic thing, but it was something that, I mean, Richard was the only one that saw that. And so it's crazy to think that. It's crazy to think, like, if Richard got voted out first, or if Richard wasn't on the season at all,
yeah, what would have
happened? Like, would anyone else have dared to suggest an alliance? Because alliance, I mean, that was a dirty word. That was playing, like, it was viewed as playing dirty. It was secret, right? It was a secret alliance. It's like, in my mind, the way they viewed it would be like you're playing a board game, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone's against each other. And this is where I kind of see their thing. It's like, all right, everyone's against each other. But if you're playing a game like Monopoly, right, where you can eliminate people by bankrupting.
Yeah, you can team up.
You team up with someone, right? All right, so we're playing Monopoly with like 3 other people. Me and you have an alliance. It's 2v3, but it's 2 versus 1 versus 1 versus 1.
Yeah.
We play together, we bankrupt the other one slowly, and then we just go at it.
Yeah.
And we guarantee that we have a 50-50 shot at the victory.
Yeah.
I can see, like, if I was on the flip side of that in Monopoly,
I can see how
I can see that being like, okay, hey, y'all are like, this is an individual game.
Yeah.
It was not viewed as a team game. Everybody, I think, was coming into it as an individual game. You can see that in their vote. But, I mean, you're in tribes, right? Like, I think they wanted it. Like, I think Survivor, they wanted this. I think they wanted alliances.
Yeah.
I think they wanted social dynamics
they
to form.
They had to have known, making the show the way they did, and like when they designed the game, I think they had to know that this was inevitable, that people were going to.
I think that's what they wanted. I mean, they wanted drama, you know?
Yeah.
They wanted, because, I mean, we've said they want interesting TV. That's what they care about. They want TV that people want to watch.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's all they care about.
And then just kind of how that is in the modern era of Survivor. You wouldn't dream of going on Survivor and not making alliances. It's just,
you can't do it.
The second you set foot on that beach, you're playing. The second you take your stuff off the boat and you start building your shelter, you are playing the game of Survivor. And honestly, it's just a scramble to find who you vibe with, who you click with, who you want to play the long game with, and just hope that your numbers end up on top in the beginning.
Yeah, it's a mad scramble to form alliances, especially when it's tribes of 3 tribes, small tribes. It's like, all right, you need to find an alliance here because you desperately need the numbers if you lose, and then trying to just not, go to tribal. Yeah. If you can avoid going to tribal, then you're good, but you got to have a backup plan, and your backup plan better be having the numbers. And so you've got to find someone you vibe with. Don't piss anyone off. You got to, like, it is, you are playing the game. I would even argue you're playing the game before you ever step foot on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
If you're riding on a boat up to the beach, or you're, out on the boat before you're about to, collect your stuff. When you're standing on that mat with everyone and Jeff is interviewing you, you're already playing. Like, like Emily she almost tanked her entire game right away
in the first
2 minutes of the season. because she, started talking crap about Bruce, which, like, I mean, she was right. And, maybe we'll talk about that later. Bruce is Bruce.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where, like, I mean, they were playing the game before he ever said go. And that's something where season 1, the game didn't start until a couple votes in, like people didn't start playing the game until a few episodes in,
Yeah.
at that point. So I think that's a really big shift in voting. And that's like such a core dynamic of Survivor. But it would be silly to not mention the other part of Outwit, which is like the strategy of the rest of the game outside of just simply voting, right? Like things that impact the vote.
Yeah.
Which it evolves over time.
Yeah.
Pretty significantly.
But looking from 45 to 1, it's night and day.
Yeah, it's not even close.
There's just so many more things that are present that you have to think about when you're voting. You have to think about splitting votes for someone might have an immunity idol.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think about people who have lost their vote, people who have extra votes, people who have steal votes, the shot in the dark. So many different things that you have to delicately balance in order to have a successful elimination of someone that you're trying to get out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're juggling all of that, plus you're juggling a couple of alliances, plus you're trying to win an immunity challenge every other day.
And you're trying to eliminate someone in a manner that they respect the move and you don't piss people off.
Yeah, at least pre-merge.
Yeah.
You're trying to, well, and like pre-merge, you're trying to eliminate people that keep you strong enough to win challenges, but you're also you don't want someone who's going to be a risk to you post-merge.
Yeah.
Which personally, I would always play pre-merge and post-merge differently. I would say pre-merge we go after strength. I know that's a lame way to play, and it's not necessarily like the physically strongest, but whatever builds the strongest, most cohesive tribe.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Get out someone toxic, get out someone who isn't good at challenges, get out someone who doesn't vibe, whatever. You make your tribe as strong as possible when you have to, so that way you can go win challenges as a team and get to the merge strong. And then let's start getting out the people that you think will beat you at the end, or people that you want on the jury, and not in the final 3. But like people are balancing that part of the strat right away. People are like in season 45, there are literally people talking about their final 3 in the first couple episodes.
Yeah.
Survivor 1, no one's thinking about that except for Richard.
No one
thinking.
thinks about who they want to sit with at the end.
Yeah, not at all. And and that's the thing where I don't think it ever crossed Kelly's mind who she wanted to sit with at the end until the last couple episodes.
Yeah.
I think it probably hit her a little bit earlier, but she wasn't seriously thinking about it until she had to make that decision.
Yeah.
And then she was like, "Oh, Brick, I don't want to take Rudy. I'm going to take Richard."
Yeah.
And I think she thought she could beat Richard, but I mean, there's just so much strategy, and I think I like the way you laid out all the advantages and disadvantages that are currently in Survivor, and I think we both can agree that's our biggest gripe with current state of Survivor.
There's too
much stuff going on. There's a lot of moving pieces.
I think moving pieces are necessary because they obviously make for entertaining television when there's things going on.
And I mean they keep things fresh season to season.
Because I mean obviously with this season when there's nothing but the vote, it gets a little dry. Especially when you're accustomed to what Survivor is now, it can get a little dry. And so having all these different advantages definitely keeps it fresh, but then there becomes a point where it becomes too much. Especially, I think that was really felt in 45 when there were so many different things that caused players to lose their vote. And I remember an episode where Emily put it very well. When you lose your vote, you are essentially useless to everyone on that beach. During that time from the challenge until tribal, you basically have no conversations with people because you have nothing to provide to the conversation. So there's a delicate balance for the producers to find where is it enough to keep it fresh and challenging for the players and entertaining to watch for the viewers, to the point where it becomes too much for the players and too much for the viewers, to the point where they're just this is just too much. I don't want to watch it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point where when you go into a confessional and they drop someone's name and they have 4 items listed underneath it. They have a hidden immunity idol, a fake hidden immunity idol,
Steal a vote.
a lose, and then they don't have a vote for the next 3 tribal councils or something. Like whatever. Like that's too much stuff. It's too many things.
Especially in a season post-merge, when you have more tribal councils where someone can't vote, that you have tribal councils where everyone can vote. That's where I'm just, I get where, when can we just have a vote?
Yeah. And that's where, like, I think if we're looking at high level, Outwit, how it has changed from season 1 to season 45, I think that the vote, actually sitting down and voting, has maybe, it's weird, but I think it's lost its power.
Mm-hmm.
In a weird way where the vote wasn't ever, like, it wasn't even strategic in season 1, but it was a more powerful moment. It had more weight on the game. But now, random things that happen in the game have more weight on what the outcome is than the actual vote.
Yeah, you have Caleb, who canceled out, what was it, 11 votes with his shot in the dark, which is insane. The fact that he could do a 1 in 6 chance. Every single player on the tribe has a 1 in 6 chance that if they're going home, they can be safe, which is insane.
Which, honestly, like, I mean, that's not even my least favorite mechanic of modern Survivor. Like, I think that's an okay mechanic. It's interesting. I mean, that's like one of the first times it's ever worked. Or is it the first time it's worked or something? Like,
it's the first time it's ever worked. There have been players who have been, I think there's been one other time where someone has been safe. But this is the first time where they've ever been safe, and they would have been the person that went home had they been.
So they got to choose who went home.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, it's crazy.
Well, no, they didn't get to choose who they went home because
they
revoted, and Jay was the one who went home.
That's right. Yeah. So I mean, it's crazy. There's a lot of stuff. There's so many moving parts, and it's like my thought is, like, ideally, right? Someone watching the show watches from the first episode of a season, right? But if your show is so complicated that someone can't hop in halfway through and figure it out, maybe it's a little too complicated. Because, like, even in, like, I think the golden age of Survivor, where there was, like, this transition from clue immunity idols to no clue immunity idols, like, that's kind of like the peak, I think, of Survivor. There was stuff happening and going on, but 1 or 2 people had immunity idols, So it was very easy. If you hopped in the middle of a season, you'd pick it up all pretty quickly. They could give an update, like Jeff Probst in the modern seasons, he can't even fill you in before the episode. Like last time on Survivor, there's so much crap out there, you're not even going to know it all, and even if he does spit it all out, you're not going to remember that, like it's too much for anyone to follow and keep track of, much less like, if it's hard for us to follow with the editors editing it in a way to make it as easy as possible, how are the people on the island keeping track of that? How, it's too many moving parts and pieces in one component of the game. This is just the outwit portion.
And to the point,
yeah, it's hard.
And to the point where a contestant on Survivor has to be afraid of other advantages that people have that can counteract their advantages. For instance, in the last season, when Austin gave his idol to Julie because he was afraid of the knowledge is power advantage, where someone could ask you if you have an idol, and if you say yes, they get it.
Yeah.
That he had to give an idol to Julie, and then that was the reason that Emily went home.
Yeah.
In my opinion, is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I really think, like, what I would really like to see out of Survivor, and maybe it's boring now to do it, but I would rather Survivor go back to, just the kind of classic immunity idol route. And, okay, make them beware idols. Sure.
I don't mind them.
I don't care if that's the case. It makes it kind of like the pre-Russell Hantz idols, where you have, like, the clues to them sort of thing, right? And, maybe there's, like, a challenge. Like, I kind of like where it's, like, kind of hard to get it and it's a little risky, or like the bird cage or whatever, like, sure, that's fine. Let's do that stuff. But like, just do that, just do the idols, right? If you lose your vote in pursuit of an idol, cool. You're taking a risk, getting a reward. But when by episode 3, there are like 10 advantages out there, it's too many. There should be, I think, if you're doing 3 tribes, there should be 3 advantages in the game. 2 tribes, 2 advantages in the game at any point. I think that's fair. And then once you're merged, maybe 1 or 2.
I think also another thing they could do to add an extra layer to the outwit that would keep it fresh is not necessarily make the idols so predictable, because the contestants go out there and they get to their beach, and they immediately know that there's an idol hidden somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that they just need to take it away, but add some layer to where it's not automatic that there's an idol out there. I don't know what they do, and in the same sense that when an idol is played, players know that the idol has been re-hidden.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Russell Hantz effect, right? That's what he did in changing the game. Was he was like, "There's an idol out there. Well, I'll just go get it. Like I'll just get the idol. Like I'm not gonna do the tasks and like follow the clues. Let's just find the idol, and skip it all. That was sort of like kind of his whole thing. So yeah, I agree. I think that the birdcage was a good attempt.
Yeah,
I don't think it was right.
It was a step in the right direction.
But it's like it is something where it's like, all right, if everybody knows there's an idol here, let's just put that sucker in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a bad way to go about it. I think there's other interesting ideas that they can do, or what might even be more interesting is like, what if we go back to no immunity idols? What if we just said no advantages, no immunity idols? I think they should do that for season 50 regardless.
Bones season.
I think they need to just do a throwback, make it like season 1 sort of thing. Just straight up strategy, no advantages. It's not as fun that way, but maybe make it where you earn the advantages other ways that are more interesting, not as in the hidden, or maybe they are hidden, but it's not just like a go out and find the idol. Like, I don't know. It's mechanics that I've not thought through, and maybe we sit down sometime and we come up with some ideas and we pitch them on this podcast to Jeff. But
he's definitely listening.
Well, we'll get him on, But so I think, I just think you strip back everything. So like if everybody knowing there's an idol there is the problem, okay. Say there's no idols on the beach right now. Just say it.
Yeah.
There's no idols. Or if there is an idol, everybody knows it, put it in plain sight. Like, I like that. I thought that was a really interesting twist. It didn't really amount to anything. I think that's partly because it was 3 tribes and not two. Like, I think if it was 2 tribes with the bird cages, maybe it amounts to something.
Yeah.
And if you take out the journeys and stuff, like, I don't know. There's just too much going on for that to be effective. But if that was like the thing, like the shtick, or, I'd love for them to go back to themed seasons, build the twist around the theme, and just do one twist instead of 10 twists. Let's just do one thing. The twist is the birdcage. Cool. Whatever. That's this season. That's what we're doing. I don't know how you frame that in an interesting season, but whatever it is. I think there's ways to make it interesting, but I think there needs to be stepping back, like kind of going back to basics. It makes me think of, I don't know if you saw the news recently about Fast and Furious 11, where Vin Diesel said that they're going back to basics. They're doing an homage to Fast and Furious 1. They're scaling back their budget to only $200 million. So really small budget there. The creator was made with $80 million for reference, and that was a low budget movie. And look at what they did with $80 million. Yeah, so he's going back to $200 million. But I say that jokingly but I do think there's a level of, going back to basics, scaling back. Find like the core of what made Survivor so interesting in season 1.
Yeah.
And in the Outwit portion, I mean, it was the vote, it was the dynamics. I do think it's the alliances. Find ways to be creative there. Like, how do they capture the magic, especially of like that golden era around heroes versus villains, Like, that's kind of like universally agreed to be like one of the best seasons, if not the best. All right, how do we get back to there besides the people who were there?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of interesting stuff. How do you think season 1 changes if there's hidden immunity idols? Let's just say like like not even like modern, just like classic hidden immunity idol, just hidden out on the island sort of thing.
Honestly, I feel like people probably wouldn't play them super effectively because of the fact that the votes were so randomized in terms of the Talkie 4 just voted for whoever they wanted to vote out. So unless the Pagong people were able to pick up on it and effectively play one, I really don't think they'd have much impact. Because I honestly don't think at that stage in the game they would have figured out the concept of splitting votes, because I don't think the concept of splitting votes happened until someone successfully played a hidden immunity idol.
I'm interested to see what season that's going to be in. I'm sure we could Google it.
I don't know what season it is either, but I know that's what happened. It's that someone effectively played an immunity idol, and they sent home someone from the majority alliance, And so then people are like, oh crap, we need to split the votes in case someone has an idol, so that if they do play an idol, then our plan B goes home, not one of our members.
Do you think that, like, if, let's say, they show up on the island and immunity idols are a part of the game from the beginning, do you think the vote becomes more strategic in season 1? Do you think that they're thinking about, like, the way they think about the vote changes?
Or do you
think they still approach it from that same kind of, like, vote your conscience thing?
Knowing the first season, I feel like if someone found a hidden immunity idol, they would just immediately play it because they wouldn't know.
Yeah, I agree.
Wouldn't know how.
I think they might. Yeah,
I think they would just get it, and then they would just say, "Oh, here, I found this. I'm just going to choose to be safe tonight."
Yeah, I think there's a really good chance that would happen. Part of me also thinks that maybe it depends on who finds it. But if they find it, the thing is, though, is like they weren't even allying themselves, like, outside of the 4. Because, like, I mean, if Jervis finds it, I mean, he probably keeps it a secret. But it's like, when does he choose to play it? Because he's not organizing votes with anyone.
Yeah.
They think that an alliance is bad. But if the Tika, right? Toggy. Yeah, I don't know why I was Tika.
Tika's 44.
Yeah, I was back on Jam. Toggy. Yes. If the Toggy 4, like, if one of them, like, if Richard found the idol, I think he would absolutely strategize when to use that thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I don't even think he would have to use it. But
say Colleen found it, I think she'd just play it right off the bat.
Yeah, I think she'd be like, I want to be safe tonight. I don't want anyone to vote, because they would see it as a, hey, you guys can't even cast a vote on it.
Yeah, a deterrent.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think it would have drastically changed the game all that much.
So then, off of that, kind of a more closing out question, would you, if Survivor is just keeping down the route it's going, which it seems like it's going to for at least a few more seasons, probably until we hit season 50, where they'll probably do some more drastic changes. Do you prefer the way that we've been going, where it's just kind of outwit overload, or would you rather have it bare bones stripped back, where really the only outwit is your alliance and where you're voting?
I mean, I think that is the outwit portion of Survivor. I don't think the twists and stuff, like, they force you to be wittier, but you have to outwit everyone every day you're on the island, because you're surviving a vote every time. I think the vote is such, like, a core component of what makes Survivor a cool and unique show, and makes it, I think, just so interesting and engaging, that I would prefer no advantages and disadvantages, just straight up voting over the overload. Now, my preference is in the middle.
Yeah,
let's go back to, like, season 20.
Obviously, yeah.
That's the preference, is that we get a middle ground, because I think there's very clearly a strong middle ground in there. But I would prefer season 1 outwit strategy over season 45. I think it's more interesting. I think it makes for better television. Especially, like, when you have people thinking strategically. Like, I have a hard time imagining, like, the way season 45 plays out if there's no advantages.
Yeah.
Like, it almost feels like it is the best. I don't know if it's the best player wins, even, though, because, like, I don't know, the best player usually gets advantages.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes them the best player. Like, it changes what we view as the best player in Survivor. Like, Richard Hatch is the best player because he used relationships and people to get him to the end and then got the vote. Whereas, like, nowadays, the strategy is, that's part of it. But another big part of it is finding idols and using them to your advantage, or, winning challenges using to your advantage, either one, usually both. So it just kind of changes what makes a good Survivor player.
Yeah.
Which is why I think they'll never go back to 1, because it's changed so much.
Yeah. To kind of add on to that, especially since I think one of people's biggest gripes with season 1 is that it's boring, because there's nothing besides immunity challenges and the vote, and then everything in between is just camp life.
It's the outlast portion.
All they're focusing on is just them surviving, and people aren't talking strategy. There's no getting into that nitty gritty of what makes Survivor.
Yeah, it was about surviving the elements and not surviving people.
And so I think what would be cool, and the fact that something I'm agreeing with you on, is I would rather have everything stripped away than keep going with what we're doing and overloading, because also in this new era where alliances are so common and that strategy is always on people's minds,
Mm-hmm.
I think it would make for really engaging television, knowing now how Survivor is played versus how Survivor used to be played. Because I think it will still be just as interesting seeing how people have to tackle getting really strong alliances, because that's what it's going to take getting to the end with no advantages. It's going to take extremely strong alliances that won't be broken.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take, to win, it's going to take a Toggy 4. Like, 4 that vote together every time no matter what, and only break up kind of towards the end, you know? Like, it takes, it's going to make alliances more necessary like they used to be. Like back in the early days of Survivor, alliances, I think, were more powerful than they are now, because now one advantage can trump a whole alliance. I think immunity idols are so critical to what has made Survivor what it is that I don't think you can ever get rid of them. I would prefer, like we said in this hypothetical scenario, prefer early over current. But I do think if you can find a way to like make the hidden immunity idol very powerful, you know, like it needs to be, but you just, you know, the one on the beach, like that's it. And figure out a unique way to do it. I don't care if it's beware. I don't care if they have to do 20 tasks to get it. I don't, you know, whatever it is, whatever you think is best, whatever tests the best, I don't care. But like, I think you make it one good advantage and you build the game around that. I think that's really interesting. It's once you start bringing in all the other stuff, you dilute the power of an immunity idol, you dilute the power of the vote, you dilute the entire aspect of the outwit game. And I mean, you make the outplay like very, very important, right? You need to just win challenges. And then it doesn't matter. You just, if you run the table in challenges, you're good. That's why like Aussie was always such like a insane. Obviously it wasn't as complicated a game then, but it was just like, if you can run the table, you can win the whole thing. Which is why people feared him. So it's like, I don't know. I think you just dilute and it's too much and it becomes cumbersome TV and it just, I don't know. It gives me a headache to think about all that stuff. So I think there needs to be some level of backing off and getting back to what made Survivor cool, which I think Probst realizes.
I think
them bringing back the auction, them bringing back the tribe swap. They're realizing, all right, we need to bring back some of these things that were good mechanics. We just need to fix them a little bit, tweak them a little bit, you know? They just need to figure out the advantages. Or, you know, maybe if there's, you know, one immunity idol per beach and we do the auction, okay, let them buy an advantage there. It's out in the open. Sure, there's an advantage. Do it right there on the table. That's okay. It's all the hidden advantages that make it really stupid and hard and frustrating as a viewer. And I'm sure frustrating as a player.
I could agree with that. So on that note, if any of y'all have opinions, if you agree with us, disagree with us, let us know. We'd love to hear what you think about the current state of the game and whether you think it should keep going like this or should be tuned back to the way it was, or definitely need to find a middle ground. Let us know what your thoughts and opinions are on it. We would love to hear.
And I'm super curious, and we'll probably make a whole video about it, but I mean, we anticipate that season 50 of Survivor is going to do something different. What do we want them to do in the Outwit? Since this is the Outwit episode, what do we want the Outwit portion to look like in season 50? And hopefully they do it in season 50. It carries forward to, you know, future seasons and makes a new generation, you know, air quotes, generation of Survivor. So whatever you'd like, whatever you want to see in season 50, what you think would be interesting. And we'll make an episode about our dream season 50. And I think that that would be, there's some interesting ideas there. But curious what you want for the future of Survivor, particularly in season 50 when we expect some sort of a shakeup and a change.
Yep, for sure. All right. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.